Welcome to Austin Tech Connect, the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. Presented to you by Netspend. Homegrown in Austin, Netspend has been a leading provider of consumer and business payment solutions for almost 25 years. From prepaid cards to mobile bank accounts to money movement services, Netspend connects people, brands, and payment products to deliver innovative financial solutions.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Austin Tech Connect. This is the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council, and we use this show to kind of hear from leaders in our community about what they think is the future of Austin's tech ecosystem. Every single week, we bring local leaders together to hear their stories of success and to get their advice on how we can all thrive. And today, I am thrilled to have with us Autumn Manning. So Autumn, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So for those of you who don't know Autumn, she has been a female executive working in technology for 20 years. She's done so on the company side, on the investor side, and we're going to get a little sneak peek into what's coming because she's starting a whole new venture, and it hasn't all been announced, but we're going to get a little bit of it out of her today. And so what she really focuses on is how to optimize culture and leadership with a very, very strong look at the operations side of your business. And that's something I think we all can learn from. So we'll ask her a little bit about that as well. So Autumn, let's go back in the Wayback Machine. You know, you've been a female exec in tech for 20 years. That wasn't as common 20 years ago. How did you get started in tech? How did you get into that field? And tell us all the things you've done.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, thank you. What a great introduction. I'm really excited to be here. How did I get started? I would say the best way to think about how I got started in tech it has everything to do with kind of the DNA of a true entrepreneur, I suppose, where I was just kind of leaned in and went big for whatever ask I needed so that I had the village of support around me, so to speak, figuratively and literally. So I actually got into tech accidentally. I cold called an entrepreneur in Northwest Arkansas. I thought I was going to be meandering off to law school after I graduated college. Life events changed, so I had to stay back. And I ended up engaging with an entrepreneur in town who was looking to make life count for employees. And so I cold called him, went for a 4-hour interview in his garage. I'm glad I did not tell my parents about that interview because how silly, but it worked out in my favor because when I heard this amazing vision he had to really, again, make life count for executives, my first statement was, we better measure that because people are never going to buy that twice if we can't measure the ROI of whatever that means, making life count. That was my first foray into tech. And so at that time, I started the research and development arm of this entity. And at the time, the entity was the CEO and myself, to really measure and map leaders' culture, the effectiveness of those two things. What does great look like across cultures of all stages and sizes and in support of different companies and business models? So that's where I started my career in tech.
So I find that fascinating because if you go back 20 years or so, you know, making life count for executives. I mean, now if somebody said that, executives would be like, yeah, you know, empower my people, empower myself, you know, turn off my phone on the weekends. But back then that was, you know, I mean, especially in tech, it was like work, drive, phone calls at 2 a.m., whatever it was. So what was it about his vision that really inspired you to sort of go push towards this, the ability to make life count kind of ahead of the curve?
Yes. So great question. And this actually goes into one of the interesting discoveries when I ventured into venture-backed tech, which is my first foray into venture-backed tech was when I raised money for You Earned It. From these venture capitalists, of which I had no idea what that meant. I literally was someone who was like, is a term sheet a literal thing? Like, do I hold this in my hand or is it a figurative thing? So I knew nothing about raising money from VCs or the entire ecosystem. But if I go back the previous 10 years of my career, when I say I worked in tech, we were working with enterprise organizations, Fortune 50 companies. And of course, as you can appreciate and know, every company has technology that powers them. It was just simply in the venture-backed space where there was this question of, does culture matter? And I found myself swimming in these conversations around the most important thing, in my opinion, of how you build something great, whatever that something is, has everything to do with the people around the table. and how you uniquely engage them and enable them to move in the same direction, optimize their performance. So this notion of this quote unquote fluffy thing that happens in venture-backed tech was probably the weirdest thing for me when I co-founded You Earned It. One more answer, which is continue to be a long answer. Apologies for that. But, most of these organizations that are very large, enduring brands, Walmart, Target, Dillard's, et cetera, they do recognize the necessity of culture and talent and how you put the machine together, so to speak. And so if I were to backtrack from my lovely naivete, just calling some guy, I'm like, I don't even know what any of this means, but I need a job because I'm sticking around town for 1 year and 1 year only. In school, I studied behavior. I studied psychology. I was the person in the lab coding behavior change or the lack thereof in kids. And how I was raised, which very different conversation for a different day, probably was a predisposed me to be deeply curious about human behavior and what causes us to move it up into the right, so to speak. So that's how I got into tech, which was building tech products within our company for these large enterprise companies, as well as optimizing their leadership teams and their culture.
So let's talk about You Earned It. So you founded that company. What was that? What was that like? What did it do? What was it all about?
Yeah, so You Earned It. I was the co-founder of You Earned It. Another Austin tech executive. He and his family moved here about 6 months prior to when I moved here with my family on Christmas Day, 2012, because I figured that'd be a great day to distract my 2 young kids to get in the U-Haul and make our way from Northwest Arkansas to Austin. And really, it's an interesting story about co-founding You Earned It because I was part of the original team. It was myself and then 3 engineers inside of Rockfish, where we incubated this product. I came on to, as I said at the time, I refused to be the CEO, but I will come on and we'll build the original product together, spun it out, moved to Austin, and then we found a CEO. There were all sorts of reasons why I couldn't imagine myself devoting the time, attention, and just everything to being the CEO. One of them was my daughter was very sick at the time. So it was fascinating. It was fun building an early product where we could really ideate and visualize this vision of a better place of, gosh, could you imagine if a technology actually helped drive meaningful engagement and behavior change across organizations? Because at the time, most companies, which dirty little secret, many of the companies still do this today, decided to reward their employees with things, tchotchkes, monetary goods. And I was looking at the market going, well, that's weird, because I know very well that's not what actually drives behavior change. So what if we, which is always the start of something really fun, what if we did it this way instead? So You Earned It was really a way to drive engagement, connection, meaning, impact, and growth across an organization so that employees could really own their own performance and engagement organically from the ground up. We happen to have a really cool way that we did that through the rewards mechanism also. But that was the original idea of You Earned It, and it was a fun ride.
So how did you get into investing then? That was when I met you, you were working for Motley Fool Investing, and I thought that was sort of very cool, but it's like, how did you ever get into that?
Yeah, that's one of those, again, going into the, what is a term sheet, or what are VCs real people? Really, again, at the beginning, I had never interacted with this world of venture capitalists, and I didn't realize how rich and rich literally, and broad the interest was. So my foray into that started like many things, which was, I wonder if. And so early on, when I was raising an inside round, before we raised an A round for You Earned It, I actually called the Motley Fool. They were a fantastic early customer. And this is about how the thought process went in my mind. I was like, we're raising a small inside round. And the Motley Fool was such a fantastic early kind of blue chip customer, if you will. They were really well known for the culture that they had built. And so I thought, I know they do investing stuff. I wonder if they invest in the early stage. So I picked up the phone, I called my contact, and I said, hey, I don't know if you've ever done this, but have you considered? And a couple of weeks later, they closed our inside round.
Wow.
After I sold the business, I stayed engaged. And by that time, after I sold the business, the Motley Fool had an early stage venture fund, and they asked me to stay on as their EAR. And I focused on two things. It was go-to-market help and culture through scale. So once I did that for a couple of years, then I went on the other side as full-time partner for the last couple of years.
Nice.
And
so,
they were very, very founder-friendly capital.
You talked a minute ago about, when we were in the introduction, you talked about that you really have this DNA of an entrepreneur, but you didn't know that 20 years ago. I mean, you didn't go to school saying, hey, I've got this entrepreneur. In fact, you were going to go be a lawyer, which many lawyers are entrepreneurial, but they're the exception, not the rule. Many of them are, they get into the cog of they're an associate, then they are the junior partner and a senior partner, et cetera. Maybe they go in-house to be a general counsel, but it's hardly entrepreneurial. So, you said, hey, I've got this DNA. Where did that come from?
Where does anyone's grit come from and their diversity of experience that most of us actually have, if the world only thought to ask about it and look for, true leaders, like what's behind the person, what really makes a leader strong. So what I would say is I studied psychology. And when apparently I didn't want to make any money, because at first I was a theater major and I was, making these auditions, and I was like, I can't be a theater major. I have no money. And these people practice and rehearse all the time. How do they do it? They must have a rich parents somewhere, and that's not me. And so I was glad that I was also studying psychology. My vision for myself at the time, which has a lot to do with how I was raised, was I wanted to represent either kids in court eventually. So I figured psychology plus law would open up options, is really how I thought about it. Or weirdly enough, I was really interested in helping to someone who assessed inmates when they were going back to society. One of those two things sounded really interesting to me. So that's why I was going to law school. Because of an accident in my family, things changed. So I would say the question in terms of what kind of chiseled, what formed the entrepreneurial DNA in me, a very diverse upbringing, that caused me to have to figure things out all the time from a very young age. And I say that with deep appreciation. When you have to solve problems and you have to look at things from every single angle and corner to make sure you have what you need to be successful, whatever that means in your life, I would say I was uniquely qualified to be a leader of people. So,
well, without going into details, it is true that a lot of people who've come through adversity and had to struggle through things really do come through with sort of that grit, I guess we would call it, that allows them to go through what you have to go through in an entrepreneurial venture or a turnaround or investing in a series of things, because investors know not everything you invest in is going to make it. So, that's painful sometimes to have 10 investments and watch a few of those babies not make it. So you have to have that grit to be able to get through that. What advice do you have for people who want to be entrepreneurs, who, have maybe faced adversity, but they don't know that they have that DNA in them? What advice do you have for somebody to get them to that?
Yeah, such a good question. I would say, this sounds so simple, but everybody has a story inside them. And everyone's story is unique and special to them, and may have prepared them to be a great entrepreneur. Because the reality is, as much as we'd like to say we know exactly how to select great leaders and select great CEOs, there really is no standard. There is no standard across the thousands of venture funds as we look. And as venture investors, what we do know to be true is it has everything to do with the person leading the company. Who is the leader behind this amazing vision, if in fact there is a big vision of a better place? And so I would say kind of show up and be exactly who you are and share exactly your unique vision of a better place. And the reality is a lot of investors are not going to want that, or not going to be your investor. And that's where the tenacity and the ability to be resourceful and the ability to stay incredibly connected and committed to your vision of a better place. You'll find your people, you'll find your tribe, you'll find your investors. Not all of them are going to get it. And that's just the way of it. It's a numbers game many times. And so really finding the investors that are right for you is just as important as investors finding the company and the CEO that's right for them.
So after several years with Motley Fool, 90 days ago, you quit your job to go be an entrepreneur again and roll up your sleeves. What got under your bonnet? How'd you do? What's that about?
What is wrong with me is really the question.
Autumn, what's wrong with you?
It's funny. The one thing after the exit of You Earned It, I would meet with people, just some awesome, relationships that I had been lucky enough to forge and build over time of being in Austin. And I remember meeting with a couple of venture fund partners, and saying, listen, the only thing I don't want to do again is to be a CEO and to start something from scratch. So anything else I'm excited to talk about, I don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up. I mean, how would anyone know what they're going to be? And I thought, even at the time, I had no desire to go be an investor. I mean, I didn't lack the desire, but I was just like, I don't know what I want to do, but I know what I don't want to do, because the reality is you need to be, I know my gear. And when I'm engaged and invested in something, it is like crammed down, full throttle, and it is not healthy all the time for myself, which is exactly why I decided not to be CEO of You Earned It in the beginning, so I could make sure I was focused on my sick daughter at the time. So, come full circle, when I joined Motley Fool Ventures, and you're right, I spent a handful of years on the other side of the table investing in early stage entrepreneurs. They're very founder-friendly capital, and I could speak to that personally, as they were one of the smallest investors on my cap table. But you better be sure the second I needed someone to call, I could pick up the phone, because the gentleman who led my deal over there, they had been on the other side before. They understood the journey, because you're exactly right. It is never, ever up into the right straight shot. If it is, I've never met an entrepreneur that suggests, well, I meet lots that maybe say, and then it happened, and then I exited my company. But the reality is, it is a brutal, very hard journey. They don't say it's lonely at the top for no reason. And especially even as a CEO of a venture-backed company, it's very hard to find your tribe. Everyone else has people they answer for or answer to, but the CEO, him or herself, it's very hard to know who you can pick up the phone and call. So I enjoyed doing that as an investor, to be one of those people entrepreneurs could pick up the phone and call, regardless of if I was on their cap table or not. And that whole time, it turns out, you can't shake the bug when you have this idea and this vision of a better place. And I've had one for a long time, and I tried so hard not to care about it. It's never worked out for me very well. So it got to the point where it was too painful not to pursue it. And so that was 90 days ago, and I burned the boat, so to speak. And I thought, you know what? I have more than a little faith this will work out. And it doesn't matter anyway, because I'm not sleeping. It's all I'm thinking about. So I might as well just go for it. And so, yes, I am crazy. I, 90 days ago, decided to go for it again.
So you have this idea that you're about to launch. The company doesn't have a name yet, at least not one that you're announcing. We're calling it the New Co. That you're working on. Right. But what is the purpose of the company? What is the mission of what it is that you're starting?
Yeah, I will tell you that part is clear, and who we're going to serve is crystal clear to me. We're really setting out to invest in and support this generation's greatest entrepreneurs, innovators, and leaders of our time. How we do that is very complex. And the reality is focusing back on that human engagement model I mentioned, this necessity to drive connection, to provide meaning, to have an impact on people and something bigger than yourself. And to be able to grow and to see yourself moving into a position or in a place that's different and better than where you are today, whatever that looks like. So I'm setting out to really drive a deep level of engagement across companies, cultures, and broader communities, so we can build great companies from the inside out. And aside from that, there's more details that will eventually be revealed soon once I can pull them all together.
Nice. Well, I have a lot of conversations in my role with a lot of different companies, and there's a lot of people around Austin who think that, some of these younger entrepreneurs who are up here, they don't have what we had 20 and 30 years ago in Austin, where there was sort of this solid community where they had people to turn to. You said, hey, you're trying to do this. Who do you even call? The people who are my age, who've been around 30 years, who've built companies, they talk about the different leaders in the community they were able to reach out to. Going back 30 years ago, there was George Kosmetsky, there was Laura Kilcrease, there was Carol Thompson, there was Pike Powers. There were 30 people who would always take the call of some up and coming entrepreneur, and then they would put them in touch with people. And that's how the Austin Technology Council was founded 30 years ago, was this need to bring that community together and to put it on the map. But there's a lot of people now who say there's just, we've grown so much, we've absorbed 1 million people. Do you think this current crop, if you will, I don't know if crop is the right term, but this current group of 20 and 30 something year old entrepreneurs, or maybe older first time entrepreneurs, do you think that it's as easy to get those connections as maybe it was? And is that part of what your company's going to help with?
A strong yes on the latter question. On the second question, we will absolutely be a big part of helping that. Anytime you talk to me, what you will see is I have a very deep commitment and mission to really drive meaningful connection. And I think that meaningful connection is a key part here, because I would say 30 years ago, we could say, yes, there was a great culture, but it was smaller, right? And then the question would be, well, what about the venture ecosystem that was here 30 years ago? And was that actually optimized and ideal for entrepreneurs? And I can tell you, as a CEO raising money in the Austin venture ecosystem in 2012, 2013, it was hard. However, it's still hard today, but it's different hard, because it is a rich culture of people who includes a base that has been here for a long time, and that really, I would argue, deeply appreciates the uniqueness that is Austin. Very unique community and a very unique culture of entrepreneurs. And I can raise my hand very loud and proud on the benefit of having those people that you mentioned. Jan Ryan was one of those people when I first stepped into the role of CEO, where people were putting me in touch with people that I needed around me so that I could succeed in that role, which is, so awesome. I've always told people, as a first-time venture-backed CEO, Austin was a fantastic place to build. You earned it, and to grow. You earned it. And now, to your point, we have welcomed in so much diversity into our culture and into our broader community. As people always talk about, lots of people came from the West Coast. And people will also say, this is uniquely not the West Coast, but as is the case with culture, we don't keep it the same. It should evolve as more people and more entities enter into the ecosystem. So I would say it's harder to some degree, because we have more tools and more technology and more incubators and more. Yet that's a lot of noise to sift through if you just need help. And who do I go to? How do I go to them? So I think it's right for Austin to set the tone for what that looks like, with a thriving, growing culture, with more people that have come to our community, so that I see there's no reason for Austin not to really put a stake in the ground for this next wave of venture growth in Austin, for us to show what it actually could look like when we leverage our uniqueness of our culture. We welcome in the new additions to make it even better, but that has to be the case where it is deeply integrated together and not separate and disconnected.
No, I agree. I'm very bullish personally on the future of Austin. And it is different, and different isn't better or worse. It's truly different. But we've sort of transitioned into my next question. Where do you think we are today as a tech ecosystem, and where do you think we're going?
If only I knew how to see where we're going. However, I guess that is the hope and the opportunity and obligation of all of us more tenured leaders across the Austin community to really make a decision to build an even better ecosystem for the new leaders that have come to town, the up and coming generation of entrepreneurs, the leaders within their company, and really helping them build strength and resilience from the inside out. This word culture, when people tell me, don't say culture, it's soft and fluffy, I'm like, culture is anything but soft and fluffy. And for any company who thinks they can actually make it through to successful exit without focusing on the quality and strength of their culture, well, we know what those results look like. So I would say, where is it now? It's in this place of exciting up. There's this kind of energy rumbling, I think, between our feet is the best way I can think about describing it. And now it's up to us to really go, okay, how do we take all of this and connect the leadership infrastructure together so that we do have, we're in the driver's seat of where it's going and how Austin wants to be put on a map, and how the companies that will be started in Austin and built in Austin, the entrepreneurs that we export from our community, we can all be collectively incredibly proud of. So we've got a richness of diversity here and of interest to build something really great. That is what Austin has always had. And so now I'd say doing it together it seems to be the only way.
Well, I say all the time to anybody who listens, that many years ago, these civic leaders, they set out with the idea of, hey, where will our grandchildren work? Because if you go back 30 years, we were a university town, a government seat as the state capital, but there wasn't industry. There weren't a lot of jobs. People who graduated from University of Texas had to go elsewhere if they wanted big career jobs. And the idea was, where will our grandchildren work if we don't build it? And I think that now we're in this place where I think it's exceeded what any of them could have predicted. We're in this boom town, tech town, and all that. But I always say a baby born today, if she wants to start a technology company or any company in 30 years, the decisions we make now are going to lay that foundation for that generation. So we really have to be conscious of it. So is there any pitfalls you think we have to watch out for as a community?
I would say pitfalls that any community has to watch out for, any culture has to watch out for, is arrogance that we already know what we're doing the way we're doing it. And and that's not ascribed to any one entity or group within Austin. I would say I liken that statement to the statement I hear a lot, which is, what is culture really? And is culture like happy hour after 5 and who you take to beer? No, actually, it's not culture. Now, that might be an expression of some parts of one's culture, but I would say the pitfalls we need to watch out for is the thought that we couldn't make it even better and better and better. I mean, I'm incredibly driven by a lot of what I've heard you talk about, Tom, about just the necessity to really connect and have the right conversations. I would say, we would trip over ourselves if we don't welcome the new breed of entrepreneurs with open arms, just like I was welcomed when I moved from Northwest Arkansas to Austin, with open arms to say, how can we help you? I would say that is what will get us in our own way, is we won't lean in and say, we're here to help make it even better. Look what we've already started in Austin. But the thought that we can't make it exceptionally better would be arrogant.
No, and that's awesome what you're saying, and we're in total simpatico about it. In fact, I spent 15 years as a professional speaker speaking at, and I still do, speaking at association meetings and inside companies about this whole idea of human connection, and that when people are connected to their coworkers, when they're connected to their industry and to their community, they tend to work harder, stay longer in their job. They're more satisfied in their job. And so I always think that's something that companies have to remember, is that it's not just show up and do the work. It's, are the people thriving with the connections that they have in what touches those areas of their lives? So I ask everyone who comes on the show, my saying for years that I believe in is community, collaboration, and conversations will solve all problems. Which one of those 3 words resonates with you the most, and why?
Tom, if anyone says anything about me, what they will say is, well, she can have a conversation. And in fact, we talk way too much. So I would say, even though that's relatable to me, community is the word I would say. However, you can't really forge a meaningful community with rich connections without those conversations you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. The three go together. Community, collaboration, and conversations go together. But it's always fun to hear people take the one that they think, oh no, that's the piece.
Yeah. So, I mean, then I would say community, because what community is very synonymous with this word culture. And I've been saying for a while, the new organizational culture is a deeply connected community. And I don't mean just within the fake, by the way, 4 walls of our one company. I mean, in case CEOs haven't looked around, work and life are fully integrated. So what does this word of community and culture actually mean? Well, we should be helping our employees establish those connections and have the right conversations so that we can collectively build the community and the culture we actually are proud of and that drives results. So I cheated and I picked all of them.
That's all right. I'm excited to see what your new company is all about and how it impacts that. And the Austin Technology Council wants to be part of it because that's what we stand for across the board, is trying to be that thread that runs through technology. Because, there has to be a fintech group. There's a time and a place for CEOs to only go drink bourbon with other CEOs. And there's a time and the place for the med tech people to be together, et cetera. But if we're going to be a community, there has to be that thread that runs through everything that's tech, which now includes, as we said earlier, every company, because every company is a tech-enabled company. So tech is everybody. And ATC, we're trying to find the visionary leaders who will help us create that thread that runs through the whole tapestry. So I'm excited to see what you do, and I'll be watching.
Well, sign me up to help. However, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this, and I love what you're doing with Austin Technology Council.
Well, thank you. And the last question I will ask, if someone was coming to visit you, maybe from Northwest Arkansas, they'd never been to Austin before, where's the one place you would want to take them and say, you got to come see, or you got to come eat, or you got to come do? Where's the place you take them?
Oh, good Lord.
I don't let people know in advance this question's coming.
Clearly. Okay. So you're talking to someone who doesn't venture out a whole lot. I spend a lot of time alone, venturing out in nature in Austin. So my answer will be something reflective of how I spend time myself and just enjoying the beautiful culture of Austin. And so I would take them on a little stroll down Congress towards the Capitol and do a walking meeting like I used to do at You Earned It, because we were right there in 9th and San Jacinto, just so that people could experience the richness of the community that is right there. Down Congress, you can go left, you can go right, and you can get a lot of the beauty of the culture of Austin, the different commerce in Austin. It's fun to walk by the Capitol, which is a unique experience. So we'll do a walking meeting if anyone wants to visit me from Northwest Arkansas, which probably means they don't want to visit me if I'm going to take them on.
Well, as long as you don't do it in August, I think you're fine. I think, a late September, early October walking tour sounds awesome in Austin. So,
right.
Autumn, thank you so much for being a guest here on the show. This was a delightful interview, and I am so excited to see everything that you're doing. Any last words for the audience?
Just kind of more of the rallying cry that you do, which is to lean in and help us build Austin. We have a meaningful opportunity to continue to put Austin on the map and be a critical part of what the venture ecosystem is building with this next wave. So, come one, come all, as I say, because it's going to take a connected community to do it.
Nice. Well, again, thank you for being here. And thank you to everybody who tunes in and listens to Austin Tech Connect every single week. I'm starting to hear from people who said, I shared this one episode with everyone in my company. Well, you know what? Share every episode with the people in your company and your friends and the people who are in your portfolio. Share it, because this is how we get connected. Because now we all know a little bit about Autumn Manning, and maybe you'll run into her while you're walking down Congress. And then you'll say, hey, I know you. And then a relationship will bud out of that. So make sure that you're sharing the podcast, and make sure, if you're a tech company, that your company is a member of the Austin Technology Council. We can't be a grassroots organization if the grassroots doesn't show up and the visionary leaders don't share their ideas of what that thread that runs through the tapestry looks like. So we need you to join the Austin Technology Council today.
Thanks for listening to the Austin Tech Connect podcast. Make sure your company is a member of the Austin Technology Council and add your voice to the future of our tech ecosystem in Central Texas.